looking at, these are Chinook salmon. And more specifically, these are spring Chinook salmon. These are Chinook salmon that come out of the Pacific Ocean last spring. So when you guys were still in school in March, April, and May, these fish were coming out of the Pacific Ocean up into the Columbia River. That's the female digging right there. So they were coming out of the Pacific Ocean and coming up the Columbia, and in about the first part of April, they start coming in the lower Yakima, and then they continue to come up the Yakima in April, May, and June. About the 4th of July, they're pretty much passed through the lower river. So they don't come all the way up here to their spawning areas. They actually will find some great big hole that they can, in the river, where they can hide in the bottom, underneath some logs or a place like that where they can be safe. And basically in the Cle Elum, somewhere between Yakima and Cle Elum area, that's where they spent the summer. So when you guys were on summer vacation, these fish were already in the Yakima River, maybe up by Cle Elum or Ellensburg, and they were just laying down at the bottom, conserving energy, and letting the eggs mature. So then about the first week of September, earlier this month, then they started moving right up here on the actual gravel where they're going to spawn. I was up here 3 weeks ago tomorrow on the 10th of September, and we had the first female digging a red out here. Now red simply means nest, so if I say red, just think nest. It's not the color red, so don't look for something red out there. It's actually R-E-D-D. And just think nest. Because that's where the female's going to lay the egg. She's going to lay on her side like that one did. She's going to dig a depression. She's going to dig down in the gravel like that. And so she's going to dig down a foot or more into the gravel. And she's going to spend some time digging the area out that is maybe 3-4 feet across. And then she's going to lay the first part of her eggs. She doesn't lay all her eggs at one time. She'll lay part of the eggs. She'll lay down the bottom of that depression and lay her eggs just like a chicken lays eggs. And then she will go to the upper part where she was digging, and she'll start to dig some more. And when she does that, she'll cover the first egg. Why is it important to cover the eggs quickly? Why?
So other fish don't eat it?
Exactly, because there's all sorts of other critters out here that like to eat the eggs. That's why we use salmon eggs for bait. So there's rainbow trout out here, there's cutthroat trout, there's little fish called sculpins, there's all sorts of fish, and there's also other things like a little blackbird that walks along the bottom of the river that likes fish eggs too. So it's important to get those eggs covered quickly. So she digs a second depression, she covers the first eggs, and then she lays some more eggs in that one, and she will do that 5 to 7 times to lay all of her eggs. And when she gets all done, she has one nest that can be as much as 20 feet by 10 feet, 20 feet long by 10 feet wide. And she has laid somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 eggs. The bigger the female, the more the eggs. This year, the females don't seem to be exceptionally big, so they're probably towards the lower end of that. Haven't seen too many big females this year for whatever reason. So when she gets all done, those eggs will be in the gravel. They'll be buried where they're protected. And what happens to all salmon after they spawn? What do? They die. So we've already got, you've seen dead fish walk along the trail. We've got more dead ones here. And all these live ones that you see are going to be dead in another week or so. So all Pacific salmon die after they spawn. And so when that's done, then the next generation is totally in the gravel in those eggs. So the eggs stay down in the gravel. They incubate just like a chicken egg, but of course they're not warm-blooded, so they don't need a warm incubator. The water's going to get cold up here this winter. About the time you guys go home for Christmas break, the eggs will start to hatch, and they hatch into kind of ugly little things that are pink and orange. They got a big yolk sac attached to them, and they just stay down the gravel. And when you guys come back from Christmas break, those little fry are still in the gravel. They stay there through the winter, even though the water temperature might be under 40 degrees out here. 40 degrees, under 40 degrees is colder than your refrigerator. So they'll be down here. They'll be in the gravel, and they'll stay there until the time of late April. Then the yolk sac is all used up, and they come up out of the gravel. Late April and May, when the water's warming up, the food production in the river starts, and so they come up out of the gravel and start feeding for themselves. These juveniles spend a full year in fresh water, which means that they feed in the river, they grow, they start as they grow, they start to drift downstream, and by next fall at this time, they're going to be down in the Ellsberg Canyon or maybe clear down by Yakima, and that's where they're going to spend the winter. They don't spend the next winter up here. They actually they want larger water areas or larger river areas where they can find some safe place to stay during the winter. And then the spring of 2012 is when these juveniles, the survivors, will go to the ocean. So they're not going to go to the ocean for a year and a half yet. So the spring of 2012, then the juveniles that survive will go to the ocean. They'll go down the Yakima, down the Columbia, out to the Pacific Ocean. And when you get to the Pacific Ocean, they actually take a right turn. They take a right turn and they go up the coast of North America and swing out across the Gulf of Alaska, way up by the Aleutian Islands in the North Pacific. So these fish are going to go a long ways away. If you look at these fish, you think a year ago, the fish that you're looking at right here were 4,000 or 5,000 miles away from here. So they've been a long, long ways away. So most of these will spend 2 years in the ocean. And then in the late winter of 2014, the surviving adults will be off the mouth of the Columbia River. They'll come up the Columbia River, they'll come up the Yakima just like their parents did. And in the fall of 2014, 4 years from now, if you guys come back and sit in those bleachers, the surviving adults from the eggs that were laid out here that you're watching here will be spawning right in this area. Okay? They come back to the very same area where they were laid as eggs. So that's an overview of the life cycle.